So, Kari, how does the demand side management on the power system, which was the subject of the previous interview, how does that fit into, or how does it relate to building retrofits?
So building retrofits are one of the easiest ways to incorporate demand side management measures and programs. First of all, because everybody lives and works in buildings. Albertans spend 90% of their time indoors in these buildings. We know that our building stock is aging. 70% of buildings that exist in 2050 are already built. And so we have a generational opportunity to actually upgrade and retrofit these buildings appropriately so that they can withstand severe weather, and they can also maintain affordability into the future. And the best way to do that is through demand side management programs. And so most of those programs end up being incentives and rebates, as well as some educational and training material that the utility gets to invest in instead of just building infrastructure. So they invest in these things and start with the upfront capital costs of retrofits are very expensive. This can help bring down some of those initial costs and enable more deeper retrofits to get done, which in turn saves more and more money. The more you upgrade your buildings and stack on measures such as LED lighting, better HVAC systems, you throw in a heat pump for cooling technology, those sorts of things, you do have this more closed, much more safe system. Envelope upgrades can tend to keep cool air in the summer and hot air in the winter when it's cold. All those things reduce the need for as much electricity on the system. That's why they're a natural fit.
Maybe I'll use my own personal experience as an example here because we put in a heat pump 3 years ago, and it was more expensive than a natural gas furnace and an air conditioner to replace our old one, which had stopped working. So we took advantage of some utility programs, some federal government programs. We had to upgrade our supply. We had to upgrade our electrical box, or from 100 amps to 200 amps. We had to do some of that work, and the incentives offset enough of the cost so that it made it competitive. And then I couldn't believe the improvement in the way our house operated. I mean, it uses way less. Well, let me put it this way: it uses a little bit of electricity to now do all of the heating and cooling. And as we upgrade into other appliances, like we put in a hot water heater, we're going to have electric vehicles at some point. It's all ready for all of that. And it just is, it was, until I did it, I didn't realize what the benefits were and how much it improved my property.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, you know, HVAC in general. So even a more efficient furnace, you buy a more efficient furnace now, it's 4 to 5 times more efficient than the furnace you had 10 years ago. So even in Alberta's really cold weathers, there's a lot of people that aren't looking at heat pumps because, extreme cold, they don't work as well. But to your point, with a $5,000 rebate from the government that says buy a heat pump, it's a great cooling technology and a backup for heat anyway. On top of that, the biggest benefit of DSM is really its macroeconomic impacts, which is job growth. There's massive amounts of job growth and reinvestment into local communities when we do DSM because the money stays where it is spent. So for you, for instance, buying a new heat pump, you probably had a local tradesperson come in and install that. So you got a rebate, you had to put the upfront money out, and then you hired somebody to come in and put that in. That creates local jobs that sustain over time. All these technologies and things that we're using, these measures, have to be installed by professionals. So we see a very big surge in how much we are contributing to local trade and GDP growth.
Yeah, I talked to a friend of mine who works. He was in the gas business for decades, and he's talking about how he notices in our local economy that the companies you were talking about, the HVAC companies and so on, that they're beginning to train their employees. They're bringing in new skills. They're bringing in new inventory, and they're offering more options, to homeowners, to building, to businesses and industrial operations. And all of that creates more value, more jobs in the local economy.
Absolutely, it does 110%. And I think, when we look at things, and you talked about the $4 to every $1 invested. So those are utility system savings. For people that participate in the programs, I think the one in Nova Scotia was $3.12 returned for every dollar invested by that customer. But there's a 2 to 3 times more impact because you've now gone out to a trade ally who has done the implementation of the measure. And then that again goes 750 to 1, $7.50 to every $1 on GDP growth, because all of that is now being spread across the community, and people are spending more money on other things that they don't have to use on energy, and also because these very high paying, high quality jobs are in place. It does have that ripple effect, and that's one of the best things about demand side management. Not only does it help the grid and create benefits to the people, the ratepayers who actually use those, become participants of those programs, but the lasting impacts actually go way beyond that, and everybody benefits.
I'm not sure that your report dealt with this, Kari, but I'm curious because other countries have pursued industrial policies where they say, okay, you know what, we're going to help business owners and homeowners switch over to these new technologies, taking a demand side management approach. But you know what? We also want to get the benefit of manufacturing the products they install. And so they'll have programs to promote the manufacturing of heat pumps or the manufacturing of controls, whatever it might be. Are we seeing that in Alberta? And maybe if not, are we seeing it at the national level, perhaps?
I would suggest we're definitely not seeing it out in Alberta. And the reason is because you need markets to have stable year-over-year investment. And so that's what utility DSM does, is those programs are invested in year after year, and it provides this stable amount of work for these contractors and for supply chains and for all of those manufacturers to understand that my products and services are going to evolve, yes, but they're also going to be needed. We have fits and starts in Alberta in terms of, we have an Alberta Deep Retrofit Accelerator program right now, which helped fund our work at AV EcoTrust. And we're seeing, there's a lot of excitement from building owners saying, yes, I do want to do retrofit upgrades, but it's really costly. And how do I get the financing to do it? How do I work through this? And then there's programs like SEEP, which is basically you can work using your property tax, get an upfront loan and pay it through your property tax so that you're not just burdened with it. If you sell your home, that measure or that upgrade is part of the property taxes that move forward. So there's all these things that happen, but if you can build on those by putting stable year-over-year investment in DSM, that's when job growth happens. It's a chicken and egg thing. That's when you start to see, oh, this technology is really cool, and I now need to train my workers on how to use it because I know that there's going to be demand for it in the future, not just for 3 years over the stability of this one program. That's what that unlocks. That stability of investment unlocks that supply chain and manufacturing and creates that stable condition for that true market transformation.
Yeah, I'd like to include an anecdote about that because I've interviewed a couple of folks who work in this industry in one form or another. They might be energy auditors or they might be tradespeople. And what they say is that it's true in Canada, but particularly true in Alberta, that programs come and go. And so the trades or the industry gears up to take advantage of the training or the incentives and programs. And then the next government comes along and either cuts them back or gets rid of them all entirely. Then the industry has to contract, and then it expands, and then it contracts. And there's no stability. And so the companies are reluctant to invest because they don't have any of that kind of long-term confidence that they can gear up and there'll be a return on their investment.
That's exactly it. And that is what DSM does. If it's invested in through the utility who needs to invest anyway, they can either continue to invest in just building infrastructure, or they can invest in a lower cost solution, which is demand side management. If they can be able to do both appropriately and treat DSM as a resource just alongside everything else that they invest in, that opens up that market. Absolutely, it does. And we've seen it in places like California, where they went from, I think, 15% or 13% of their population was in the trades, and now it's close to 20%. And 95% of those jobs were grown through utility work. So they work on utility-led investment in DSM.
Kari, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.